ladies and gentlemen, it's a Ukrainian talk show on Pod TV. My name is Sasha Star, and my today's guest is Dr. Jonathan Lockwood. Welcome to the show, Jonathan.
Thank you, Sasha. Glad to be here as always.
Yeah, thank you very much. Every day we have tons of news and announcements and interviews and just name it. And eh, I don't think we could even go to analyze every news and every announcement, really.
No,
We'd be obsolete in 15 minutes.
yeah.
So it doesn't make sense. But overall, you can now see certain strategies. It still could be adjusted and changed, but something is crops up. And it appears to me that in the last several months, we never seen any change of positions of the Russian Federation. There are no change. And yesterday's Putin speech just reconfirmed that they will continue to fight. They are not going to agree to anything whatever differences between what they announced in June, what they need as a peace with Ukraine. And we know all the points by points what it is. Let me remind you, it's a demilitarization of Ukraine. Army no more than 80,000 people. It is all four oblast and Crimea is becoming part of Russia. And even those parts of this oblast that were never taken by Russians, they have to also be given to Russians as a part of the deal. And no right for Ukraine to join either NATO or European Union or any other Western organization. In some
essentially, what's mine is mine, and what's yours is negotiable.
Something like that. I even don't see any points what could be negotiated with Russia until, of course, in the view of Donald Trump's exceptional negotiation talents. So maybe we are missing something. Obviously, something is there that we just don't see or fail to see. What do you think, John?
Well, I think that the way the events are currently proceeding, the Russian power of the Russian offensive is steadily decreasing. We see that their logistics to be able to sustain such offensive operations is also steadily decreasing, as has been revealed by the fact that they're now using donkeys to try to supply their offensive, which is not going to work any more effectively than horse-drawn wagons worked for them in World War II. So and the casualty rates are still higher than acceptable, really, or sustainable for the Russian military forces. The quality of their forces is not going to go up. If anything, it's going to decrease steadily over time as they go more and more dip deeper into their available manpower pool. And once it starts getting to the point where they have to draft Russians themselves, the ones that they've been steadily trying to avoid, then it's going to become even more problematic for them. And as I've stated on previous programs, contrary to the belief of some Western leaders, Ukraine actually does have one card left, at least one card left that it can play, which is to unleash a surprise military counteroffensive against a decisive, what I consider to be the decisive center of gravity in this war, the Crimea. Seal off the Crimea, force the surrender of the Russian occupiers in Crimea, and that will be a blow from which Russia really cannot recover as far as trying to take over Ukraine or compel its surrender. They are in no position really to attain a military victory in the Ukraine at this point. So, if events continue on as they are, and European members of NATO come together and reinforce Ukraine and submit and put in peacekeepers, or put in reinforcements per se, to help bolster the Ukrainian defense, I don't see any way for Russia to compel a peace on its terms. And President Trump is not interested in looking bad.
We'll talk about what he's interested. Right now, there is a bombardment of civilian targets and energy infrastructure in Ukraine, which is completely unopposed because United States withdrew their intelligence sharing with Ukrainians. So Ukrainians have absolutely no way to figure out where the attack is coming, and they started to really sustain considerable losses in civilian population and in infrastructure. And if that will be continue on for a week, 2 weeks, a month, hmm. I think Trump was saying that he's going to achieve a peace through strength. So, unfortunately, his strength is absolutely focused on Ukraine. He wants to break Ukraine down because it's much easier to bring peace by saying to Putin, Putin, what did you want at all Ukraine or half of Ukraine? We can deliver you all. Here is the Ukraine. Do whatever you want to do. Because I believe that in his grand scheme, he wants to become a ruler together with Putin and Xi, a ruler of the universe. And for that reason, he doesn't even have to do much. He has to deliver Ukraine to Putin and Taiwan to China, and that's it. And there is nothing else. He doesn't have to sacrifice the life of American people or going into billions of dollars of expenditure. He doesn't have to do anything at all. The only thing is what he has to figure out what to do with still, believe it or not, democratic Western Europe. Okay, so he will kill NATO. There is no need for NATO in today's environment. If he and Xi and Putin are ruling the world, what is NATO coming in? I mean, it's anachronism, has to be absolutely killed. So he and um, his helpers, such as J.D. Vance, they absolutely badmouth European democracies and they are making fun of them. And basically, what I can see is that they even don't allow Europeans to come to the negotiating table about because Ukraine is still part of Europe, and it's very strange that European who uh, in spite of Trump's statements, Europeans put more money than United States in the defense of Ukraine. So they should be at least as equal at the table. Now, the interesting question, though, is if the deal between Zelensky and Trump will not be signed, and Russia doesn't want peace in any case, then what Trump is doing at negotiating there? What is he exactly negotiates? Deals with Russia? What else? What do you think, John?
Well, he right now it seems that the Trump administration is still trying to figure out whether or not any kind of deal is in fact possible. In my opinion, they are going to soon learn, very reluctantly, that there is no deal possible, that they are forced into a de facto situation where Russia must simply exhaust itself. And the Ukrainians have demonstrated that they are capable of far more capable of prolonged resistance, if history is any indication, than the people are expecting. For remember, at the end of World War II, when the Russian Soviet army came back through Ukraine, the Ukrainians resisted them as much as they had resisted the Germans, and a guerrilla war was ensued without outside help. Guerrilla war took place, which was not fully suppressed until 1954, 9 years after the
Yes.
end of World War II. So if the Ukrainians are that resilient, and if the present day Ukrainians have maintained that level of resistance and willingness to resist the Russians, that there is no the war is in fact Zelensky will be proven correct that the end of the war it will be much farther away than people currently suspect. Uh, and right now, uh, my view is that the United States is triangulating more towards seeing China as the primary threat rather than thinking.
I don't think so. It's once he will make a deal with Putin, with Ukraine or without Ukraine, some kind of deal. Obviously, he will do with Putin, maybe with the same rare earth metals, or build some Trump towers in every Russian city. I don't know, whatever it might be, but there will be something. He will not be able to get Russia away from China. That's not going to work. So there will be then. Triumvirate of Putin, Trump, and Xi. And in this environment, he will easily make deals with China. Okay, I will not put tariffs here, and you have to give some concessions there, or so on. They will be able to negotiate deals. Trump, in my opinion, look at what he's doing with his trade deals, with his tariffs against Canada and Mexico. One day is tariffs, later in the day, no tariffs, a month's delay. Okay, months is gone. Okay, no way, absolutely, they can do nothing. The tariffs are going at midnight. Oh, next day, guess by 4 o'clock? No, 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 no. We'll wait another month. Maybe we'll just do some tariffs in some, maybe aluminum, maybe somewhere else, and it's coming in 2 weeks' time, or so on. So you know what? Even stock market is becoming very disappointed in what Trump is doing, because for the first time he put on tariffs, and then same day he postponed them for a month. So market went all the way down, and then it recovered very nicely by the end of the day. This time it didn't work that way. Market went down, and when the tariffs were postponed again, it stayed about the same, and at the end of the day, it went even more down. So market is losing its confidence in what's Trump doing, and it's really getting scary now. I agree with you that Ukraine can continue its heroic resistance, but when now US withdrew any help whatsoever, which was provided for the last 3 years, including sharing intelligence which helped Ukrainians deal with these Russian air attacks. It's no longer available. This is why Ukraine started really to take astronomical losses in human lives, in infrastructure. Europeans hopefully will be able to provide something, but I'm not aware that they have the same capacities as US, so it's not going to be on the same level. But even something, whatever they can provide, would be helpful to Ukraine. So right now, all I see again, maybe Trump is a genius and he's going in next half an hour completely change everything. Here is Ukraine, here is a 500 tanks, and here is a 1,000 of F-16s and F-35. It's a new game in town. Unless that's happening, I'm very pessimistic of Trump's role in these negotiations.
Well, I would respectfully disagree in that I do not believe that President Trump is committed to a whole-scale sellout of the rest of the world in favor of creating as you kind of put sort of a triangular empire sharing the rest of the world between Putin and Xi in the United States. I don't think that really is in the cards. What I foresee is that the United States, as I have proposed, the creation of the worldwide strategic defense matrix. If the Trump administration chose to be more aggressive,
they don't need it. By being friends with Putin and Xi, they don't need any strategic defense system. And this is definitely where Trump is moving. And now, okay, this is debatable, what I just proposed. I agree with you. I'm not insisting that that's exactly the plan. It looks more and more like this is a plan, but it's not there yet. But bringing capitulation of Ukraine to Putin, that to me looks quite obvious. Even if you will deny it, but that's what's happening right now in front of our own eyes.
I would prefer to withhold judgment on that for the next several months until we see how things continue to develop. Because this is a very short. The Trump administration has been in power for a very short period of time compared to the entirety of its first term, and so I would suggest that again. I am still very much of the opinion that Ukraine still has that one remaining card of the surprise counteroffensive, which it could unleash at a proper time, which could change the entire political discussion and discourse on this. So I prefer to withhold on that as far as saying that the United States has changed its foreign policy and grand strategy in such a way as to be completely antithetical to what it did during the Cold War and what it ought to be doing, in my opinion, in the 21st century to be the world's geopolitical balancer in much the same way that Great Britain was to the continent of Europe. So
I don't think that U.S. will be able to fulfill this role. It's there is not enough culture. There's not enough historic understanding of everything. There is too much greed on the whole leadership, or present leadership. So I don't believe that that role is possible. Now, remember when Trump was saying that it will be negotiations through strength. So what he is doing, he is increasing Russian strength and definitely decreasing Ukrainian strength to such a degree that another few days, like last 2 nights, I even don't think that Ukrainian will able to resist. I don't rule out that now in the next round of negotiations with Zelensky, Trump will say that, well, look, we carefully examined this deal and we have to change slightly parameters of the deal. It's going to be 75 for us and 25 for you. And if you will not sign it in the next 15 minutes, then it will be 90 for US and 10 for you. So, my friend, time is clocking. How about that?
disagree.
Okay.
I don't see that. Seriously, that's a little bit too much hyperbole for me.
Well, we know the differences between first agreement that were supposed to be signed during the Saudi Arabia meetings and the second drafted was supposed to be signed on Friday in our covenant. In the first draft, there were only rare earth metals. In the second one that Zelensky was supposed to sign, there were oil and gas and lithium and all remaining minerals, whatever they're available in Russia. In Ukraine. So why then you say that this is impossible yet still to change?
I'm saying yes. The Trump administration has demonstrated so far that they are capable of moving from position to position as the situation develops. So I do not rule out anything, particularly if the other side oversteps or overplays its hand.
Okay. Now let me ask you this, Jonathan. If there is a viable plan, which is early next week, will be the all chief of staffs of Ukrainian-led alliance of European countries which are willing to provide to defense of Europe and Ukraine, of course, too, then they can provide Europeans. They are awash with money. The money is not object for Europe. Whereas US has $36.5 trillion worth of debt and growing, by the way. So why Ukraine needs US at all, which US already stopped any help, logistical help, the military help, the intelligence help, everything is stopped as it is. So if everything will look in a positive way and it will materialize possibly, then why Ukraine needs US, especially as negotiator. So it's not helping Ukraine, period. So all it can do is negotiate, but if it's biased toward Russia and its last action against Ukraine, clearly proven that why Ukrainian needs United States, period.
Well, if the European members of NATO are willing to come together and, for example, seize Russian assets that have been frozen and use those in defense of Ukraine, and essentially doing what President Trump is encouraging them to take more of the burden on the defense, well, then, in fact, then Ukraine does not need the U.S. in order to be it does if they're able to get that enough support to basically exhaust the Russian ability and willingness to continue its offensive, because the military trends, Ukraine has shown great resourcefulness in being able to adjust and inflict superior casualties on the Russian forces. They're continuing to lose their ability to successfully maintain an offensive. And if the Europeans can successfully compensate for the loss of U.S. support, and by stepping up and even being willing to supply their own forces, because the European members, they see their own vested interest in defeating Russia and bringing them to a stop, because they know they have a very strong historical sense of what happens when you appease the Russians. It doesn't lead to peace. It leads to more war and more aggression. And that is why if the United States, after observing this, then decides that, well, we need a proper asymmetric response, such as creating that worldwide strategic defense matrix. Because remember, the United States is interested in creating its own Iron Dome, the version of it. Of course, as we both know, as we both discussed, Iron Dome is not, as the way the Israelis have it, is not really possible, because it lacks that ability to intercept intercontinental ballistic missiles from Russia or China or even North Korea in their boost phase. That's the only way you can realistically stop the nuclear missile arsenals of those three nations. And in order to do that, you need space-based interceptors. Those space-based interceptors cannot be satellites. I learned that from my participation in previous war games. Because if you put satellites up there trying to intercept nuclear missiles, that creates a hair trigger situation in which the side that strikes first is the one that is going to have the advantage, kind of like having a Mexican standoff in low Earth orbit. But the only way you do that is you have to upgrade the space fleet. This will lead them down the path of, okay, if we are truly going to have peace and stability, you have to be able to neutralize the nuclear missile arsenals of those three nations in order to prevent them from being able to intimidate the West by threatening nuclear escalation. That's the way you stop it in the long term. So I'm still, shall we say, cautiously optimistic that the United States will be, shall we say, reluctantly dragged into it, being convinced that, hey, these people are not willing to compromise. They have no sense of a deal in the sense that we understand it. So, as a matter of fact, they will learn that the Russians regard contracts and treaties and agreements like they regard eggshells, made to be broken.
Well, I don't understand why this deal is being such a big thing, because there is nothing about improving defense of Ukraine, helping defend cities against merciless Russian bombardments. There is nothing. So that deal, if signed, it will require 5 to 10 years to do the studies, to sampling, to analysis, to choice of technologies, feasibility study, all that combined with the financial considerations and so on. So there will be no Americans on the ground for the next at least 5 years. And that agreement has nothing to do. So Trump's announcement is that as long as our people on the ground, anybody, including Putin, will be crazy to attack Ukraine. But for 5 years at least, there will be
I would agree. There's a window. window of vulnerability there, a window of vulnerability which the U.S. needs to be very mindful of. And that they right now it looks like they're being a little bit hasty and not looking at the longer term implications of what they are doing. And so that is something which needs to be carefully watched, and we will be observing and commenting on it. But I'm saying that just as I said, like I said back in 1994 in an article when right after that agreement was concluded, where Ukraine had to give up its nuclear arsenal. I mean, my projection at that time was that absent decisive intervention by the West, that we would either be forced into choose between increased nuclear proliferation through Ukraine becoming a nuclear power. That's the Scylla, if you will, the bad choice, or the Charybdis of a Russian-Ukrainian war. Well, guess what happened? We got the Russian-Ukrainian war. It took about almost over 20 years for it to emerge, but inevitably it did. And Henry Kissinger had warned at the end of the Cold War about the potential reemergence of Russia, that Russia would not stay in a collapsed state forever. Inevitably, it would recover and would begin to reassert itself, as it has done in centuries past. They will again try to reassert itself because of Russia's sense of security as bezopasnost, without danger. All of this is connected. So the Trump administration will eventually learn the lesson that Winston Churchill had been saying, that the Russians respect nothing more than strength, and have respect, and they have no more contempt than for weakness, particularly military weakness. And the Europeans understand this, and so they are moving up. And I don't know if you saw some of the really amazing comments, vicious comments by this one Russian military spokesman or political spokesman, talking about how they were looking forward to basically committing all sorts of atrocities on various British and French and other soldiers, which I thought really, I was thinking when I read these comments, is how much vodka has this man been drinking before he made these comments?
I know, a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, he really was hitting the bottle before he made those comments. So it felt like saying, "Oh, come on, tell us how you really feel."
Well, what can I say, Jonathan? You're absolutely right that we have to just observe and watch and not to jump with conclusions.
There are a lot of people there. Sasha, you look at the various commentators that have been reacting these various things in recent days and weeks, and it reminds me very much of the some hysterical comments that were made in centuries past in the press, in the American press in particular. Yellow journalism is not new. I mean, yellow journalism, the sensationalistic journalism that it specializes in snap conclusions, snap judgments, and often very hysterical judgments. And
some facts remain. Fact number one: Russians have not made any concessions whatsoever in the last weeks, months. Furthermore, even Zelensky and some other politicians suggested for 1 month, Macron, for example, for 1 month to cease all hostilities in the air, on the water, and it could be continue some skirmishes on the front lines. That's okay because it's too difficult to control. Okay. So, and during this month, to figure out all the possible agreements, and if it fails, so okay, so the war continues, and if it yes, then we'll move to the next step, the ceasefire, the peacekeeping forces, perhaps, and so on. Russians would disagree with that just as well.
Yeah. And in that situation, you have basically the only logical response, given that situation, is to hit them hard enough, suddenly with a surprise counteroffensive that really gets their attention by force. And yes, but that it sounds paradoxical, but hitting them hard enough to get their attention is what this would
What to do that, Ukraine needs a little bit firmer agreement with European countries.
Yes.
They have to completely throw out all US with its help. Especially think about it. According to this deal of rare earth metals, Ukraine must recognize US help of $350 million, which was not even close the real number, but they have to sort of agree to it. So from that portion of whatever there will be future profits of the deal, the first $350 million will be paid to US. I don't understand why Ukraine even continues to discuss this deal. I mean, maybe they're just playing for time. I don't know.
Could be.
I really don't know, because this deal is completely not in the interest of Ukraine. Zelensky was very brave not to sign the deal in the Oval Office. And then was funny a poster of Monica Lewinsky who says Zelensky has no clue how to behave with the presidents of US in the Oval Office. That's kind of nice arc.
I will be polite and say that's a very ironic statement.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's a very ironic statement considering the relative history.
Yeah, maybe next time he will hire her as a consultant, and so she will teach him.
Okay, no, I won't touch that.
No, that's fine. Listen, Jonathan, we have to go with absolutely all the best and the worst as it's thrown at us. In addition to Russia's complete denial of any peace arrangement, even any ceasefire, even for a month, then it's very untimely Trump's action to completely terminate any help to Ukraine, including intelligence help. Something tells me that two things are not happening independently. I think they are working together very well. There is, okay, here's an Ukraine, let's talk some peace. Oh, I'm not interested in talking peace. Well, then it's all yours anyway. Okay, so there will be no talks about peace. But we'll see. Let's not jump too far ahead. Okay, Jonathan, all our listeners have a great weekend. And I will see you next week on Tuesday, same place, same time. Glory to Ukraine. Bye-bye, everybody.
Well, my goodness. We are.